MTG Banding breaks down pre-modern.
Next on Eternal Durdles.
Hello, everybody. Eternal Durdles is celebrating Bandmas this year by posting an episode every single weekday in December. That means like 20 episodes. As you can imagine, it is a gigantic lift for me. If you can support the channel by going to patreon.com/eternaldurdles for the low price of $5, you'll be getting an episode every single weekday in December, free of charge. That's just going to happen either way. And you'll be getting ad-free content and a bonus episode every week. So if you can do that, that's great. Thanks for watching. On with the show. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zac Clark. And with me this week, very special guest on this Monday, we have Phil Nguyen, MTG Banding. Phil, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on. This is awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, always awesome to get you on because you're sort of the level set for the pre-modern field. But we, first let's start off with some news. LobsterCon sold out in like 4 hours.
Man, it is nuts. It's like Taylor Swift tickets, almost at that level at this point. Like, last year it sold out. I don't remember exactly how fast it sold out. Maybe like 48 hours.
Yeah, it was like a day or 2 days. It was fast, but like not this fast.
And even then, like people were like, "Whoa, this is like way too fast." And so. For this year, the organizers basically tried to give as much heads up as possible. They were like, this is the date and the time that's going to open. And even so, like people knew, but it sold out, I think like 330 slots within a couple hours, which is wild.
Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel. Yeah, it's one of those things, and of course I reached out because I still have friends that like wanted to get in. I almost forgot to do it because I thought it was Sunday or Monday instead of whatever it was. I thought it was a day later. So like luckily Phil was like, "Hey, I think it's open. We should register now." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, like the podcast is paying for this one." But it was just wild that it went so fast. So I reached out to the TO, and I was just like, "Hey, is there a wait list?" Like got a couple people onto the wait list because like this just it's kind of a indictment of how excellent the event was this year. Like people want to go to that event because it was so fun. The community's awesome. Like second, I would say, at least as good as the legacy community as far as like guys and girls our age that just want to have fun, like that just are there to like have a good time, play a format we love, see the old cards, see a little bit of style. Like some people like to do like all my cards are of that era. Some people are like only white border cards, like everyone has their like cool little style that they do. Some people are like, I'm only doing like Chinese, versions of the cards, or like I'm, Phil's gonna try and alter his entire Stasis deck or something like that, But like it's so cool that like everybody has their own particular style that they try and bring, and then you have these people that are like magic luminaries that show up. You've got Mike Flores shows up, the Spike Colony podcast, Lanny Wong, all these people that are just out there like to support like a format that is not a pro tour track. There's nothing at best.
Maybe someday.
Yeah. Something I talked to Nick Koss about at Eternal Weekend was like, hey, it's awesome that you guys are supporting pre-modern here. There were a couple really nice big events there, but what about like you can't do a championship event there because that already exists. But like, what about something on that level? And he was receptive to it. So that's cool to see that like that it's something that like, hey, maybe next year, on Thursday, it's like the big pre-modern jamboree or something like that. That would be a cool thing to have.
Yeah, a lot of good points. I mean, I agree that at least for the pre-modern community, at least based in the US, I think that LobsterCon is kind of like our Eternal Weekend, right? Where it's like you have a lot of, like you said, generally older players. There are definitely some younger players too. But, this is like kind of the event where everyone gathers and kind of celebrates the format and meets the people that you talk to online or you like read about, and like everyone kind of shows up. And it's definitely very cool. And for Eternal Weekend, at least in Europe, pre-modern was one of the main events there, which is really cool. JK Entertainment was I think the host, and the organizer is a big pre-modern player, Flippy, and so he told us that they had 6 main events. They had Legacy, Vintage, Pioneer, Pauper, Modern, and Pre-modern. And Pre-modern was basically like in the top rung, like only Legacy and I think Modern had more
Okay.
players. And so yeah, I mean it's definitely growing, and who knows, maybe in the future, pre-modern will play a bigger role in some
Yeah.
of these like eternal events.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you look at these, because this is a fan centric event. This is made by the players, right? You look at things like Popper, EDH, these things that like kind of just like took off because there was a ground level love for this kind of play, right? And you never would have thought that like it would have been supported at the level it is now through
Yeah.
WotC. And you look at like Gavin Verhey, giant fan of Popper, right? And all it takes is someone like me getting a job at Wizards of the Coast and being like, you're going to start reprinting cards for pre-modern, like
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's not like that, you can't design for pre-modern, but like you can take these cards into mind when you're doing sets like whatever that new like time twisted set was that just came out that had all the like future sight versions of cards and stuff.
Oh yeah, that was sweet.
Yeah, and there were a lot of really cool like throwback cards there that you can just like my style is the weirdest version of cards. Like if like you should see my 8-cast deck. I have like the digital like version of the what's it called? The Seed of Synods that are like
Oh,
ridiculous. They're
those are
cool
awesome.
looking, yeah.
Yeah,
But
those
then I
are
have
sweet.
like the Morgul Knife instead of Shadow Spear, and like just every different possible version of cards that I can find. So that's my style. So I like that like whenever they put out something, they're like, yeah, future sight versions of like
Why not?
Core Nomad, that stuff's cool. It would be cool to see WotC like be like, hey, we're not recognizing this as like a main format, but like we know people are into it, and we want to make sure that we support those people too. I think that would be like a really cool nod at a relatively low lift for them too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be like kind of the best case scenario, right? Is that Wizards, like you said, knows that if they know that pre-modern is growing and that there's a player base out there, is to reprint some of the staples. And there are certain cards that need, I don't know if need is the right word, but don't have like a foil treatment, for
Yeah.
example, which would be great. Or they do have a foil treatment, but they don't have, it wasn't reprinted, so it's super expensive. So like, for example, like Wrath of God, like the only foil one was the 7th edition one, which was like super expensive. And then they reprinted in, I think, Dominaria Remastered, maybe something like that.
Maybe, yeah.
And it was still the 7th edition art, and it was retro frame, and so you could get in foil, and it was like a pretty nice option for some people. Like stuff like that. I think the pre-modern community would really like. Like the weird printings, I really enjoy, but I know that there are also some purists out there who would be not as happy if they started like reprinting. I don't know, like all the different key cards and unrecognizable arts for some people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not looking for like that weird like Van Gogh preordained situation, but like I don't mind. I don't mind like a weird border every now and again, as long as the art's recognizable. Fun. That's fine for me. Are cards that like just are kind of rare that like aren't that are a pain in the butt to find. Like what's that? Flash of Insight, like as a card like we haven't seen reprinted in ever. I think
it was never reprinted. That's wild.
I don't think it was. Yeah. Stuff like that,
but on the list, but the list is not necessarily so easy. Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to talk to you about what pre-modern looks like right now, because it's been I don't know what 4 months ish since LobsterCon this year. Next year is going to be in May, so that's great because my Q4 isn't like packed with like events that I have to go to, so it's kind of nice. May is like a good time.
That is nice.
They're holding it on Phil Bleckman's birthday.
Really?
Which is a big deal.
That is cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because like pre-modern is one of those formats that has a fixed card pool, right? But the
Yeah.
meta keeps changing and adjusting for a variety of reasons, right? Is one, more and more players are entering the format. More players have spent more time in the format, so they're adjusting and tweaking existing deck lists, and then we like learn about new things or new technologies, stuff like that. And so it's still a very vibrant community in terms of like brewing and meta changes. Going into LobsterCon, I think most people were most afraid of Replenish. I think that was like the
Yeah.
biggest thing. Just replenishing in Parallax Tide, Parallax Wave with Opalescence, and it basically enables you to do exiling all the lands, all the creatures permanently, and
Yeah.
it's very hard to interact with. Like you can't you can't really actually do much once it's in play, and so it can be a frustrating deck to play against. But that was the deck that I think most people were fearing. I had been tracking large in-person events like the meta and the win rates leading up to that, and Replenish was one of those decks that definitely had an outsized conversion rate relative to its meta share, and so a
Yeah.
lot of people were worried about it. LobsterCon happened, and Replenish did okay, but the breakout deck was mono blue Dreadnought, and a lot of people, I think we'll probably admit that they were sleeping on Dreadnought a little bit. Like they weren't quite as ready for it as prior years, and so that was one issue. And then the second was, there was um, this, I guess, somewhat secretive deck that had been floating around in some circles. It was essentially built by David Raxa, based out in the Rochester area, and his mono blue Dreadnought was similar to previous versions, but had a few key changes. The biggest one was Parallax Tide in the sideboard. Some people had used Parallax Tide in Dreadnought shells before, but this one put in the sideboard, and it also had a few other changes, including 2 Mishra's Factory in the main, which I thought was kind of cool because in my mind, I'm like, I'm only going to play 4 or 0 Mishra's
Yeah.
Factories because they like scale up really well together, right? And so only having 2 was definitely something eye-opening for me that I had never really thought about, to be honest. And then the last change was really loading up on Flash of Insight,
Yeah.
card that we talked about earlier. And I think you play. I don't know. I don't remember if he plays 2 in the main or 1 in the main, but there's 3 total, I believe, in the 75. And so each of those components had been done in the past. Like someone had done 1 or 2 of those things in the past, but he combined them all together. And he also had a very innovative sideboard plan, which he had passed around to some people. And he actually also made it available to anyone now. If you contact him and you make a small donation to a charitable cause, he'll share it with
Amazing.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really cool. He's definitely raised a lot of money for great causes and shared the knowledge because he's put in countless hours of work into it. If you listen to Spike Colony, they've done interviews with him as well as Brian Selden, who took that deck to victory at the North American Champs this year. He also won last year. And so it was kind of a cool story that, this kind of new-ish exciting deck took it. And then, like you mentioned with Lanny also took the same deck to the next day to the pre-modern side event and won that too with the same exact deck. So anyway, that's basically a long story of saying this is now the new breakout deck that everyone is like trying to figure out how to beat.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very good. Uh, it changes up a lot of matches that it previously might have struggled a little bit with. And so this is kind of the new deck that everyone is facing. I'll quickly wrap up by saying the rest of the meta is basically like, in terms of tier 1, it's still like kind of goblins, there's burn, replenish. Um, there is still the Oath Terrorvore decks,
Yeah.
though those have been on a slight downswing, but are still very good and very scary. Mono Blue Tide is another kind of breakout deck in the last few months
Yeah.
that has been around for a little while, but has had some adjustments and done really well. And so I
That's in
think
my
that,
holster for sure. Yeah.
yeah, So I think those are kind of like the top decks. There are definitely some other decks that are creeping around the edges. Like there's this awesome black green recurring nightmare survival deck
Oh yeah,
that has made
a
a lot of
classic.
waves.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like one of those decks that have been around for so long, and people have really started to take a closer look at it and revitalize it and put in some reps online, and it's made a big difference. So that's another one, and like Elves is another deck that had been super strong for a while. People kind of like, I guess some players stopped playing it for a while to move on to other things, and now there's been kind of a resurgence in Elves activity. And that's another deck that has been doing really well.
you failed to mention Stasis.
Stasis, Stasis is funny because okay, so that's not a good thing if Elves is on the upswing
Yeah,
for Stasis because Aquarian Ranger, they just like
yeah,
untap everything. It's crazy. But yeah, Stasis has honestly been a pretty cool deck too because I remember for a long time it was okay, it's bad, but it was like in Stasis, like it was like the same 75 for or 60 for a long time. And then people started to take kind of more I guess different innovative approaches to it, whether it's splashing colors or trying out different win cons and stuff like that. Like there was a big splash a couple months ago in which a player, let me think, I think they like reduced the number of Forsaken cities, usually a four of, and I
okay.
think that they tried like one. And I think for Black Vice, they might have only done one or two, and they instead used Morphling. And people were like, wait, how do you use Morphling if all your stuff is tapped all the
Yeah,
time? And I think their strategy was basically like you essentially like lock them out, and then you like end of turn, you like chain of vapor, your stasis or whatever, and you're at such a far advantage now that you can use Morphling
just
pretty
close out.
effectively.
Yeah,
Yeah, like pretty quickly. And I think that was like pretty interesting. So there's a lot of different takes on the deck now.
that's the version I played against in the like a challenge
Oh yeah,
at EW. It was a Stasis on Stasis mirror. And we got into this whole fight about who would keep. He tried to bounce my Black Vice,
yeah,
and we like 4 or 5, like it was like 4 days counterspell. A draw spell to see if you could get another counterspell, a counterspell on top of that. Arcane Denial. Eventually, I won that counter war, and then my opponent untapped and slammed a Morphling, and I was like, I don't think that there's anything I can
yeah.
do about that. But and that was like game 2. Game 1, I won pretty convincingly with like a turn 1 Black Vice against a deck that just doesn't do anything for the first 5 turns of the
Yeah,
game.
then you just kind of sit
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
But then in the third game, I play powder kegs, so I was just like, I'm going to get this powder keg down and protect it and get it to
Take
5.
it all the way up to 5.
Yeah,
Oh
I just
man,
sat there with
amazing.
it on 5, and then we did the same thing where there was a counter war over bouncing my powder keg, and I won that 4 times in a row. I just sat there and was like, I'm just going to only protect this. I don't need to cast Stasis. Like
Yeah.
in the mirror, it doesn't matter if you cast Stasis. So I literally sideboarded 2 Stasises out because I was like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to cast it if anything.
Yeah.
Like, and my opponent ended up just scooping after that. It's like, that's all the ways I have to get rid of powder keg.
That's
So
crazy.
I guess I just lose. But yeah, I say all that to say this. I think I'm on Stasis come May, but I might play Blue Tide. I like Blue Tide. I like a standstill deck. It's interesting because it's standstill but without like Swords of Plowshares.
Yeah, I mean, there are different versions of Blue Tide now. I don't think the main ones actually play standstill anymore. I could be wrong.
Update
but
my lists.
yeah, well, Andy Levine, who is a great player here in New York, he's been on Mono Blue Tide for a long time now, and I think he just released a primer on Spike
Perfect.
Colony
Amazing.
about it.
I'll have to look at that.
Definitely,
I'll have to look that up.
Check it out.
Yeah, and you're doing, your Substack, MTG Banding. I want to make sure everyone knows to check that out. We'll have the link for that below. That's a great resource, especially to keep you kind of keep you relevant as we're coming up to, LobsterCon. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of analysis in there.
Yeah, it'll be good. I write a newsletter. It's only maybe about once a month, basically as like time allows. But I try to highlight different things, and I think the next issue will come out in the next week or so,
Nice.
and that'll be like a recap of my 2024. And then we'll probably do in January kind of a community panel of just like, how people are feeling about the format.
Awesome. Yeah. We got to get you on the Eternal Durdles Christmas bandwagon and have you just posting every day.
Maybe someday. We'll see.
Yeah. Dude, it is hard. So I've been doing an episode every single day. That is weekday in December. Yeah. And I initially was like, I don't know if I'll just like be able to create enough, like, will there be enough relevant stuff to say, day to day about Legacy, about, we have pre-modern, we have vintage, we can talk about as well. And it's wild. Like after you just get in the thick of it, you're like, oh yeah, I've got another 4 ideas. Like I'm ready to go.
Yeah, there's so much that you can talk about. It's like kind of like you said, it's like time and resources, really.
It literally comes down to that. I've gotten a little bit better at editing too, where the editing is I can
nice.
go like from hitting the record button to putting the show out. It takes me I think about 2 hours now.
Okay.
So I've gotten a lot better about that. But then we had like audio issues that we were dealing with and stuff like that at the very beginning of the month that I think I've smoothed out. Comment below if I smoothed it out. If I haven't smoothed it out, hush your mouth. I don't need to hear about it anymore.
No, all engagement is good engagement.
No, please tell me if the sound is bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I say all that to say this. People want more pre-modern content, I think.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely grown a lot in the last couple of years for sure. And it's cool. I mean, I think I'm always one of those people that thinks that you should kind of play a mix of different formats, right? Like you have pre-modern, you have Legacy, and it's okay to like go back and forth. Like if you're really loving Legacy right now, your pre-modern deck will mostly still be like relevant and available to you. And conversely, if you're not feeling Legacy, you have pre-modern. And so it's like kind of the nice thing about Magic is you can kind of try out different things.
I've got my my battle box here of pre-modern decks. Yeah, I've got all 12 of like beautiful. the current meta. One of them's missing because it's the Stasis deck that I was playing.
Yeah.
I put that in a nice box for Eternal Weekend.
Yeah, it's a special one. Beautiful. Yeah.
But that's the nice thing about the format too is that it's relatively friendly as far as cost is concerned. A lot of times when you're playing, it's proxy friendly. Depends on the organizer and whatnot. But also the fact that like you're allowed to use any printing of a card. You don't get that like European old school like you can only use unlimited versions of cards kind of situation. Which like look, as a purist, I get that, but at the same time, like this is a format we want people to get involved with. We want people to play, and it's fun to get new players involved because things like Blue Stifle Knot come out of nowhere. You get people who decide to innovate on decks. Like when I first got in the format, I was like, okay, like what was good back then, and I was like looking around trying to figure out like all the decks. I played Cadaverous Bloom at LobsterCon.
How was that? I know that you didn't make top 8 or anything, but did you have a good time with it?
I had a blast. I didn't do well. I think I went like 3 and whatever. But I won a game almost every match, aside from Dave Kaplan was on Blue Stifle Knot, and he just blew me out of the water immediately. But here's what my tournament looked like. I can sum up my entire tournament by 2 matches. My first and last match. My first match, I forget the player's name. But
Gary,
I put
right?
that. I think it was Gary. I put out a primer on the Spike Colony pre-modern Facebook group, and I was just like, this is how to beat this deck. This is what's good. This is what you got to watch out for. Blah blah. And I was, of course, I like to if I'm going to do content, I'm going to do the full thing. I'm like, here's how to beat my deck. And of course, my round 1 opponent is like, hey, I read your primer, and I'm like, oh no. And so turn 1, island go.
Yeah.
I play a land go, and then turn 2, he's like, meddling mage.
No.
And I'm like, oh no. If he names Drain Life, I just auto lose. I have no way of getting rid of this thing. He goes, squander resources. I'm like, well, that will stop me at least for a while, but I can still get there. The next one was on like prosperity or something like that. I was like, how's he not? But like, it was just very hard to win, and then eventually he closed the door, and I lost. And then
That is tough.
my last game, my last match, my opponent he'd never seen this deck before. So like it was literal sorcery to him the first time I went off. Because like game 1, I did my thing. I just like went off, right? Game 2, he just tempoed me out and got me. Because he didn't know what was happening in game 1. He was just like, this guy's losing half his life. He's skipping his next couple of turns.
It's like all these lands coming out of everywhere.
Yeah, he's duressing me, and then he casts Abeyance, and then a Drain Life. He's like, okay. But in game 3, slams a Meddling Mage. Names Squander Resources. Okay, cool. Slams a Meddling Mage, names Cadaverous Plume. Okay, that's going to be really hard to get past this.
Yeah.
Slams a Meddling Mage, names something else. So he's got 3 Meddling Mages on the board. And I go, okay. Massacre.
What?
And Massacre, like it was really, I ended up losing that match because he did end up, like I didn't have anything else I could really do after I Massacred. But I like went off like halfway, but like couldn't do anything else. I was like, I guess I'll pass. But it was one of those things where I was like, I lost a lot, but I made a lot of people very nervous.
Yeah, I mean, playing against Meddling Mage is definitely bad luck when you're on combo.
Yeah, I should have. There were things I could have put in the deck to like stop me from like outright losing to Meddling Mage, but like I don't know, man. I came to have fun. I came to see if like maybe like in the blind with not a ton of people knowing what I was up to, if I could like sneak in like a top 8 with a deck that like no one had ever really seen.
That's like kind of the dream. I mean, in the European champs the very next day, Phil Altman had the Iggy Pop deck made top 8, which many people have tried to make work, and not super successfully, but he found a way, and so it was really cool. I think a lot of people were cheering for him because people just love like, they like roundabout combo decks.
Yeah.
They don't, not like Replenish or Stifle Knot, but they like,
That's the one that like it flips over the top card of your deck and deals damage. Is that what Iggy Pop is?
No, so that's Draco Explosion.
Yeah, Draco Explosion.
Yeah. Iggy Pop is basically revolving around Ilgan Gains. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah, I sure do. Like, that's discard your hand and put 3 cards from your graveyard into your hand. Remove this from the game for 4 mana.
Yeah, it's 4 mana, and I think both players discard their hands, and both players choose 3 cards to return back, and then you exile. But basically, you build up Storm by like intuitioning for whatever you need, whether it's like Ilgan Gains or LEDs or rituals, and so then you don't loop through the Ilgan Gains, but you like cast 1 and you get more Ilgan Gains and LEDs. And then you keep doing that until you're out of Ilgan Gains, and you have all this mana, and then you like Cutting Wish for Brain Freeze or whatever. Okay. So it's pretty cool.
All right, yeah, that's a cool one. Yeah. I mean, I found this is the one format that has the most tolerance for stasis. Like people are like respect when you play a stasis. No one's like that's how it feels like in Legacy right now. When I play a Nadu, people are like, yeah,
it's true. It's funny because like people like sometimes make fun of stasis, but I think you're right that people like respect it because it's just been in the format for so long, and it's not like a tier 1 deck, so people aren't like, oh, this sucks playing against it, because they kind of respect you because they're like, you are generally somewhat of an underdog, even if it is like a good deck. And
they're like, this guy must know what he's doing.
Well, hopefully, we'll see. I don't know.
I played at a larger side event at the end of Eternal Weekend, and I went against Goblins. I think Goblins again.
Oh, really?
And then played like a Rexar deck.
Yeah.
But Goblins is very good against Stasis. Like you would think you would be okay, but like because of the I forget the name of the goblin that can sack a Skirk Prospector, because you can like figure out ways to get around the stasis that way. But all the games were like, all the matches were close. Like there was one where like I got blown out in the first game. Second game I get stasis down. Third game I get stasis down, and then she figured out how to like get me. Then what was awesome is I played against her dad in the next round, same deck.
That's
You know,
so
like got trounced there too. It was overall just like I don't know, man. Like it's a fun experience to just play the format, but like when people are like cool about your deck choice too, they're just like, yeah, okay,
yeah.
this guy's doing this thing. Like everyone I played was like super fun and was just like, yeah, I mean, Stasis happens, and then they were like, you know, like no one was like grouchy because like they got Stasis down. I think I've been the most salty about getting Stasis out of the game, mostly because I'm just like, how dare you, Stasis,
Like
rebel
I'm the
against
one.
me? Yeah, like,
I'm the one that should be doing
yeah.
that. That's so funny.
I think, you know, look, everyone who plays Stasis as a deck has been hurt by Stasis at some point and then decided, like, I must join the dark side.
That's the only way to learn, you
Yeah.
know? You got to know how it feels.
I remember back when it was, like, depletion lands, like, in Standard, like, people were playing, like, Veld and, like, I don't know, what is it, Polluted, or not Polluted Delta, Underground Delta or something. I can't remember the name of the card.
Yeah.
But you know, untaps every other turn land from Ice Age, and then you're playing like Limdol's Vault to find the Stasis, which I'm honestly, you know, I'm surprised that's not something that people have tried, is like figuring out ways to like do like Stasis is a 4 of, and sometimes you don't find your Stasis and it's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised no one's tried like Limdol's Vault or something like that to just like figure out a way to get there. I get that, like, you know, the non-basic land part of the deck is the draw to the deck.
Yeah.
Or having all the basics and just knowing that like you're not soft to what's it called to Wasteland.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, you have your Forsaken Cities, so that's like, you know, colored mana, and then I feel like I've seen some players use Lotus Petal before just to like really accelerate out like a Stasis. So I mean, between that's like 8 colored sources. So I don't know, maybe.
I was rocking I forget retraced image for a while so I could do Stasis on turn 2. Like retraced image, put in a second island, then play a Black Vice and then untap and play the Stasis with an island up, and you're just
That's
like,
so
we're
good.
going to the races.
The hidden blue ramp spell that no one talks about.
And the problem with that is like you really need a gush like to stay in that game. Like you just if you don't have a gush, you're in some real trouble.
Yeah.
Because you need to draw those extra cards, and then you need to like get to a point where you know, you have enough islands to like do the thing. At least with gush, like you're guaranteed to get 2 more turns out of it.
Yeah.
And possibly drawing like even if your opponent counters it, you get like 2 more turns. So you know, you're doing a good amount of damage, I think, to your opponent with the Black Vice. But anyhow, this isn't the Stasis podcast.
I mean, it would be sweet to do a deep dive on that at some point. You know, it's like such an amazing card because it just like elicits so much joy from people. Just like the artwork is so iconic.
Yeah.
And I was like going through Faye Jones's like portfolio just to see what other artwork she had done. I had like this idea at one point that I would see if I could like make an entire Stasis deck using her artwork. But then I was like, then I'd have to like contact her to see, and then it would just like this whole can of worms, like, because I don't want to like rip her art and just like print it everywhere. You know, that would be like very unethical. But she has like some great artwork that would really fit the vibe of the deck. So maybe in the future, but I don't know.
Who is your favorite Magic artist? I know we never talk about this stuff on the cast.
It's definitely Rebecca Gay. Like she has like amazing artwork that I really love. In terms of like other artists, I don't know. Like I like a lot of the classic ones. There's definitely a lot of good ones now as well.
Yeah, Hoover's my all-time favorite. Like I just love Quentin Hoover's art. It just evokes such a nostalgia for the game, and you know, just looks so damn cool. It's so like
agree.
Sharp, you know.
Yeah, I did join. There's like a Facebook group that's run by his son, maybe, or his agent. Yeah, and I joined that just because I liked seeing his artwork. Because like Vesivin Doppelganger was like one of the first artworks that I saw where I was like, wow, this is like amazing.
We would have like schoolyard like almost fights about who would get to use the doppelganger. Like that was like, and cloning a doppelganger was like that was the ultimate. If you clone someone's doppelganger, we loved that card. He's got
I
so
think.
much cool Lord of the Rings art too.
Oh yeah, I'll have to check
Yeah,
that out. I'm pretty sure I could be wrong, but I think Mike Flores' favorite artist is also Hoover. I think
yeah,
he like had an article about it or something.
awesome. I have to look that
Yeah,
article up. It's no Who's
yeah.
the Beatdown, but yeah.
It's right up there. It's right up there.
Well, Phil, it's been a blast having you on. I don't want to keep you for too much longer because
Yeah, all good.
we can only talk about Stasis for so long before people start to drop off. But always a blast having you on. Kind of going over the metagame, talking about LobsterCon, getting people excited for the pre-modern format.
Yeah,
You can check out Phil's Substack in the link below. Like I said, it's about to come out next week, so now's a great time to check that out.
yeah.
But with that said, thanks everybody for watching, and we will catch you next time.
See ya.
Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.